All right, everybody. So these notes for Unit 8, Lesson 1, notice it says Part 1. Part 2, you'll actually finish up next week. So you can save this to Notability and keep adding to it as we finish up our notes. So today, we're basically going to learn some parts of circles, and some of this you may already know, some of it you might not. But we're going to start off with just some vocab and then put these words to a picture. So, to start with, it says the center, the radius, diameter. Those are words you're probably familiar with. The center is, technically it's the middle of the circle, but the fancy definition is the point equidistant from all points on the circle. So, if you were looking right here, this would be your center. All right, it's pointing right to that point in the middle. The other terms you may have heard before, radius and diameter, what those are going to be are essentially a segment in both cases. A radius, you'll notice, it says is from the center to a point on the circle, where a diameter is basically it's from like one side of the circle to the other, and it goes through the center. And something important to know about those two is that a radius is half the diameter. So if you were to add a radius plus a radius, you would get a diameter. So to label those two, radius and diameter, we'll go back here. The one right here would be radius, because it is pointing to just this segment right there. The whole distance across, that would be like right here. That is your diameter. All right. And again, you could see if you went from the center to here, that would be one radius. This would be another radius. And together they make the diameter. All right, let's go see what these other things are. So, semicircle, that's just half a circle. All right, if you're smaller than that, you're called an arc. It says here a portion of the circumference. And that's kind of a tough definition to understand without talking about circumference. Circumference is the distance around a circle, but that actually shows up in the next part of the notes. So just know that an arc is like a little chunk of a circle. All right, and then central angle is an angle whose vertex is the center of the circle. This is basically an angle made by two, I call them radii, that's the plural of radius, and the center is the vertex. So let's label those last three. I think the picture will help us understand that. So everybody, it says we're looking for a central angle. That would be this guy, because it is an angle whose vertex is right here, the center of the circle. The little chunk right here, let me pick a different color. This is part of a circle, part of the whole circle. That's an arc. And then a semicircle would be the last one. It's not really pointing to the right thing, to be honest with you, but semicircle is half a circle. So what I'm trying to highlight in green here, that would be like a semicircle. Okay, so there's the vocab terms for today. Again, there's a little bit more we'll talk about, and that'll come with the second part of the notes. So if you want a quick little summary of everything we just labeled, you can see that right here. If I skip ahead 2 slides, this will help you just see everything in totality. You see all the different words we're going to be talking about. But to go up here and finish this last part up, it said there's a few more parts of a circle we haven't talked about. Now, we did talk about it. They're arcs. So it says right here, now that you know what an arc is, let's talk about 2 different types of arcs. So there's either a major arc or a minor arc. So what you would do in this case this would be a minor arc because you are less than a semicircle. Now, a major arc, oop, that wasn't the best drawing. A major arc, you see it's pointing right here. That doesn't really do it justice because it says it has to be greater than a semicircle. And this again is major arc. You would have to go from here all the way around to there. Then you've gone past the semicircle, which is right there. And we'll eventually get into measurements with these. If you think about it, a semicircle is half a circle. So a semicircle, if you remember that a full circle is 360 degrees, a semicircle is 180 degrees. And then basically minor arc and major arc, a minor arc just has to be less than 180 degrees. It's less than half a circle. And a major arc has to be more than that. So that's a quick little rundown of what those terms mean. That might be a little bit new to us, the terms major and minor arc. But I think from what you know about circles, that's a pretty quick thing to pick up on. And again, like I said, if you need a little review of everything, you can look right here. Some words that we're not really getting into a ton today, but we will later, are a sector. That's almost like a pie piece. That's this guy right here. That'll be the next set of notes. And we won't really discuss the formula for circumference until next time. So basically what we're going to go do is talk about major and minor arcs. So right here, we're going to name some vocab terms. And then on the next set, we're going to talk about identifying the arcs. And then lastly, their measure. All right, so starting up here, it says, can you name the circle? Now, you don't get to name it like Joe. You have to name it by its center. So you would call this circle P. Name a radius. There's more than one. I'll name them all. Notice they all have to have P in them. You have to start at P, the center. So PA, PC, PB. Name the diameter. In this case, that would be AB, the one segment that goes from side to side through the center. And name a central angle. That's any angle with P as its vertex. So like CPA or CPB. Now, if you wanted to get all fancy, you could even say angle APB. That's a straight angle, but that's kind of weird. You probably wouldn't do that. You would probably stick with these two. All right. So naming just parts is something that you could do. Another thing you may be asked to do is name these guys: minor arcs, semicircle, and major arcs. So a minor arc is any just arc that is less than 180 degrees or less than half the circle. So from like A to D or A to C. Oh, sorry about that. Or C to E or D to E. These are all minor arcs. The notation for an arc is almost like a segment. You just put a little arc above it. So these are all arcs that are minor. All right. A semicircle would be, there's two ways you can name that in this case. Let me erase these to make it easier to see. You're looking for diameters. So a semicircle is half a circle. So if I were to start at D and end at C, that's one way to name a semicircle. But you might have noticed, could I have started at A and ended at E? That's a diameter. And you're right. AE is another way to name a semicircle in this case. Now, a major arc that contains A, and that's an important thing they said here. When you do a major arc, you need to have kind of like some guideline. So they're saying it has to go through the point A. That's what that means. And with a minor arc, you always write 2 points, but with a major arc, you write 3 points. So an example of a major arc, and it has to contain A. If we want to go past halfway, let's say you went this way. That would be a major arc because you went past halfway, you contain the point A, and now how do you name it? Now pretty much you just have to pick any 3 points. So don't name them all, don't write A, C, E, D. You'll never write O because O is not part of the arc, it's part of the center. You could say that arc you just drew, I would say you need to start with A and end with D because that describes the arc. And then what you put in the middle is up to you. ACD is one way you could have named that blue arc we just drew. But that's the same as writing AED. Those are the same thing. Just like with the segment. If you remember with segments, you could have had like 1,000,000 points on a segment. And if this was A, B, C, D, E, F, segment AF has a bunch of other points that are on it. You didn't name them all. You just went from A to F. With a major arc, you have to mention one of the points in the middle. So you'd have to say like C or E along the way. If that segment example didn't help, just ignore it. All right, so another major arc, another, just so you can see more examples of that. What we could have done here is maybe you went this way. Maybe you were at C, you contained A, it said you had to contain A, and then you kept going. So notice C to D, that's halfway, then you kept going, and you got to E. Now, just like we said with the last example, you have to mention the letters C and E, because that's where you started and ended. And then maybe you call that arc CAE. Or maybe the equivalent would be CDE. So really, a major arc just has to go past 180. Containing the point A, these all had A in them. And the only other thing you have to do is make sure you use 3 points. And make sure that the first doot and the last doot are the beginning and end. What you put in the middle, notice, is up to you. The middle point could be anything that you passed along the way. Now, will that always be the case? No, you won't always have this many points given to you on a circle. So basically, if that confused you, just know for major arc, you really just have to be greater than 180. That's the main thing you're looking for, bigger than 180 degrees. Okay. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is that idea with measurement, the degrees right here. And you'll notice, sorry about that, the little mini homework for today is strictly on what we've talked about. It will not get into this stuff. This will be for next time with circumference and some other aspects of circles. So pretty much the thing you need to remember is that the whole circle, remember, is 360 degrees. And everything else we find from there is going to be broken down from that. What I would recommend is, in these examples, don't worry about like question A, question B, all that just yet. I would actually mark them all. Mark all your minor and major arcs that you can. So for instance, if I look at this, this is 40, this is 56. I know from X to W, I just made a semicircle. That's 180 degrees. So if you were to, this kind of goes back to the stuff we used to do with triangles. Add the two numbers you have, and then subtract them from 180. That will tell you that remaining amount of 84 degrees. So that is how you can find these components right there. Now, how are you going to find the other arcs? That might seem a little confusing. Well, what you could do is the following. Sometimes you'll have vertical angles, which will be very helpful. Like right here, whoop, whoop. I could already tell you that this is going to be 84 because it's vertical. But if you didn't see those vertical angles, another thing you could have done, almost could like tilt your head a little bit. I know I can't demonstrate that to you right here, but if you look at this, m to x is a diameter. Here's 56 again, here's 40 again, and just like we did, if you added those and subtracted from 180, you would discover that that's 84 degrees. Now, something you'll notice here, angles and the arcs, a central angle and the arc that is contained by it are the same measure. That's something we'll talk about more in the other unit, or the other part of the notes rather. But how I did this little vertical angle trick, if you were wondering, that's a cool thing. Like if this is a 40-degree arc, this is a 40-degree angle. And that's going to be helpful in our future notes. So it's kind of like a preview for it. Now, the last thing, if you use what we talked about, this is a diameter, this is 180 degrees, and if you know that that's 84, 180 minus 84 is going to give you 96, and that's what this arc is right here, as well as this angle. So knowing that, now you can answer a bunch of questions, because now you can go back and look at these guys down here and answer your questions. So all these ones here with X, Y, W, and whatever, all right, let's do it. Now, to make this a little easier to see, I'm going to take the angle part out. So I'm going to just put them along the arcs so it's easier to see. All right, let's answer these. So the measure of arc X, Y, well, from X to Y, you would have to add those two up, 56 plus 40, and that would be 96. From X to W, you already know that, that's 84. DXM, so now we're talking about a major arc. And what you'd have to do for D to X to M is add a bunch. So let's do that in a different color. Let's do pink. From D through X, ending at M, that is this pink arc right here. That's how that you could interpret that. And we just have to add those three up. So 56, 84, and 96, and see what we get. And I believe you get 236. And that makes sense. It's a major arc. Should be more than 180. And lastly, YMW, that's a semicircle. That's 180. All right, we're on to our last one. End of the notes. Are you ready? Let's look at this picture. So here we go. This has a diameter of CA. So the first thing I'm going to do again is label everything before I even look at the questions. So what I tried to show you there, that's a semicircle. If you had done 180 minus 32, that will give you 148 degrees. And that, everybody, is either this angle or this arc right here. Oop. So from B to A is 148 degrees. Okay? And then we'll do the same thing on the right. So that's another semicircle from C to A. If you know that's 58, then to find AD, we're just going to do 180 minus 58, and that's 122. Okay, time to answer the following question. So here we go. The arc from B to C. Now again, that might seem obvious. We talked about how if this angle is 32, that arc across from it is also 32. BD. All right, to go from B to D, we just have to add these two, 32 and 58. And that's going to be 90 degrees. All right, A to B to C, that's a semicircle, that's 180. And lastly, A to B, we already found it, 148. All right, so I know there's a lot of examples here, but basically, if you can find the measures of major and minor arcs, that is the only arithmetic or math going on. Everything else we talked about is vocab and understanding the ways to name major, minor arcs, the notation that comes with them, and the other parts of a circle. This is kind of the summary of what we just talked about. So next time we do notes, we'll talk about how to find circumference, sectors, and the arc length, not the arc measure. Those are 3 things we'll talk about next time. All right. Any questions, you can let me know. Good job. And don't forget to try out the few examples in the homework for today.